From the very beginning, Roger's story is one of exile, abandonment, and the desperate search for belonging. Wild West Roger. Roger's first crash landing on Earth occurred long before his famous Roswell incident. Historical flashbacks reveal that he came down during the 1800s, where a family of fur trappers discovered him. Rather than reacting with fear, they adopted Roger into their lives and treated him as one of their own. For a brief period, he lived as part of a pioneer household, sharing in their rugged survival on the frontier. However, this fleeting happiness ended in tragedy. While Roger was away chasing after a runaway wagon wheel, his adopted family succumbed to accidents and illnesses common to the time. By the time Roger returned, they were all dead. This moment deeply scarred him, instilling a permanent fear that everyone he loves will eventually die. That fear resurfaces in later years when Roger traps the Smith family inside a video game to keep them safe from death, demonstrating how the trauma of his pioneer family never left him. The Wild West chapter shows the roots of his emotional instability. He longs for connection, but cannot escape the inevitability of loss. This early Earth encounter shaped his later paranoia, obsession with control, and reluctance to form genuine attachments without disguises. Meeting the Smiths. Roger's second and more famous arrival on Earth happened in Roswell, New Mexico. After his crash, he was captured and imprisoned at the top-secret government base known as Area 51. There, his existence was hidden from the world, and he became a test subject. During an escape attempt, Roger encountered CIA agent Stan Smith. When grenades were thrown into the room, Roger pushed Stan down a chute to save him, narrowly preventing his death. This act of rescue placed Stan in lifelong debt, leading him to hide Roger in his own home. From that point on, Roger secretly lived with the Smith family. However, Roger's self-perception during this time was based on a false belief. He claimed he was sent to Earth to decide humanity's fate, holding the power to judge whether humans would live or die. The devastating truth, revealed later, was that Roger was nothing more than a crash test dummy launched into space with no mission at all. This realization crushed his ego, forcing him to rely even more on Stan's protection and the Smith family's household. It marked the beginning of his chaotic life in Langley Falls, where his manipulations, personas, and outbursts would become a daily presence. Personas and alter egos. To survive on Earth without being discovered by the CIA, Roger turned to disguises. What began as a practical necessity grew into his defining characteristic, an endless collection of elaborate personas. He constructed an entire costume factory in the Smith household, complete with workstations, storage racks, and systems for maintaining his disguises. Each identity had its own wardrobe, mannerisms, and in many cases, a full life. Roger's obsession escalated to the point where he maintained over 3,000 different Facebook profiles, one for each alter ego. This commitment shows both his creativity and his instability. The psychological consequences of juggling so many false identities took a toll. Roger often loses track of who he is, slipping so deeply into roles that he confuses reality. One of the clearest examples of this is his persona, Sidney Huffman, a mild-mannered Bible maker with a girlfriend and a quiet life. Sidney began receiving death threats from a mysterious figure, only for Roger to realize he had been sending them to himself. In a twisted finale, Roger confronted Sidney and literally stabbed the persona to death, erasing that version of himself. His personas allow him freedom, but also fracture his identity, making it difficult to separate disguise from truth. Wheels and the Legman. Among his many personas, one recurring partnership involves Steve Smith. Together they become Wheels and the Legman, a crime-solving detective duo. Roger throws himself into the persona with full dedication, dressing for the role, inventing cases, and dragging Steve into his obsession. On the surface, it appears to be an adventurous collaboration, but in reality, their investigations are defined by bickering, confusion, and complete incompetence. They rarely solve anything. Ironically, when they do stumble upon solutions, it is usually because Roger himself committed the crime they were investigating. Their accidental discoveries expose his actions rather than validate their detective skills. This ongoing routine highlights Roger's compulsive need for roleplay. He doesn't engage in these personas for success or recognition. He does it because he cannot stop immersing himself in fabricated lives. Even when the premise collapses or the persona achieves nothing, Roger clings to it, showing that the performance itself is more important to him than the outcome. Wheels and the Legman illustrates the dysfunction that comes when Roger involves others in his fantasies, pulling them into chaos that exists only to satisfy his compulsions. Ricky Spanish. If one persona defines Roger's darker reputation, it is Ricky Spanish. Unlike many of his disguises, Ricky carries a legacy so vile that the entire town of Langley Falls reacts with fury at his reappearance. Roger himself often forgets about Ricky until he rediscovers the costume. The moment he steps outside wearing it, mobs of people chase him in anger. Ricky Spanish is infamous for acts of cruelty that go far beyond pranks. His list of transgressions includes stealing candy from children, assaulting elderly women, and even desecrating medical procedures by defecating into a patient's open chest cavity during surgery. The sheer disgust he inspires proves how damaging his actions were to the community. Unlike other personas, which provide Roger with amusement or attention, Ricky is remembered solely for his malice. His name alone provokes outrage, a reminder that some of Roger's disguises cross into irredeemable territory. Ricky Spanish represents the extreme potential of Roger's personas when they are used purely for cruelty, leaving behind scars that no disguise can erase. The Army of Rogers. In the episode The 200, Roger's addiction to roleplay escalates into global catastrophe. During a reckless moment, he climbs into the Hadron Collider just as it activates. The machine's reaction devastates the planet, leaving Earth in ruins. More alarming, the energy release unleashes hundreds of Roger's stored personas into physical existence. This army of Rogers floods the world, each one carrying the unpredictability and destructive impulses of the original. Humanity organizes resistance, leading to large-scale battles against the clones, but victory is impossible when each duplicate acts with chaos and selfishness. Unlike many American Dad episodes, this storyline does not reset at the conclusion, suggesting it occupies a non-canon timeline. Nevertheless, the event underscores a critical point. Roger's personas are not just eccentric costumes, but dangerous manifestations of his instability. The Army of Rogers represents the ultimate consequence of unchecked identity play, where his fractured self overwhelms not only his family, but the entire world. It demonstrates how fragile the balance is between his disguises as harmless entertainment and their potential to collapse civilization when given form. Roger's dark side. Roger's violent tendencies emerge most clearly when he feels disrespected or crossed. Even trivial slights trigger extreme retaliation. One example is his reaction when Steve stole a cookie. Roger devised an elaborate plot to convince Steve he was adopted, manipulating a couple into believing they were his real parents, all to traumatize Steve for revenge. In another case, Roger began a limousine business and picked up frat boys who skipped out on a $20 fare. Instead of moving on, Roger hunted them down one by one, running them over or cornering them, even crashing a plane mid-flight to eliminate the last survivor. These actions reveal his lack of restraint and his willingness to escalate small disputes into massacres. Stories also reference him killing guards and constructing a boat from their corpses to escape captivity. Unlike his disguises, which provide amusement, these acts show his capacity for raw cruelty. Roger is not only unstable, he is lethal when provoked. His dark side is a reminder that beneath the costumes and humor lies an alien capable of extraordinary violence, making him one of the most dangerous figures in Langley Falls. Roger as a father. Despite his destructive tendencies, Roger briefly takes on the role of a father in the episode Persona Assistant. After developing a large growth on his head, the mask was removed and unexpectedly grew into a sentient being named Rogue. Roger quickly adopted him as his son, and their relationship mirrored Roger's own chaotic nature. Rogue inherited his parents' violent tendencies, openly enjoying acts of aggression such as shooting people in sensitive areas for entertainment. The dynamic between Roger and Rogue highlights an important theme. Roger's behaviors, when passed on, replicate in ways just as dangerous as his own. Instead of offering stability or guidance, Roger's form of fatherhood becomes another channel for reckless violence. Rogue embodies the continuation of Roger's instability into another being, ensuring that his legacy is not only the countless disguises he created, but also the destructive traits he has instilled in his offspring. This chapter of his story emphasizes how deeply Roger's identity is tied to chaos, ensuring that even his role as a parent results in further disorder rather than growth or redemption. Now that you've seen Roger's entire story explained, the next video you need to watch is Every Time Butters Was Abused Explained. It goes through each shocking moment step by step, and trust me, you won't believe how much he went through. Click over to that one next.